Welcome to another great conversation today with Chief Strategy Officer Todd Fine from Atlanta, Georgia. Say hello, Todd.
Hi there. Hi, Mitch.
Well, I'm just going to jump right in with our first question. How would your friends describe you, Todd?
That's a loaded question to start off with, isn't it? I would say very driven, very focused, pretty hard worker. Once I set my mind to something, I'm one of those people that I just don't let go. You can knock me down 10 times. I'll probably stop after the 10th, but I'll just keep getting up. I can be kind of tough in terms of not letting people or anything get in my way, but at the same time, one of the things I'm proudest of, which, maybe I'll get a chance to talk about later, is, creating a culture within an organization, which is all about, people and caring about them and what their motivations are and dreams are. But pretty driven and focused, I think, is how they would describe me.
Well, I also noticed behind you on the wall, I couldn't help but not notice Todd A. Fine, electrical engineer. Engineers have to figure things out, or you probably can't go to sleep. Is that true about you?
If there is a problem, I literally cannot go to sleep. And if there is a customer problem or a people problem, me and my, partners will joke sometimes. I will literally get like a stomach ache. If there is a customer issue, you've let somebody down or you have them to fix, you can't sleep, you can't rest until you fix it. So it's funny about the engineer thing. I didn't realize that was in the picture. You define yourself in interesting ways, right? So my initial degrees were in electrical engineering, electrophysics, but then I got an MBA in business, and I became a software person, and I've done all these things. But if you ask me how I personally identify, like deep in my brain, it's that engineer. I mean, I always go, I'm an engineer at heart, even though I haven't done engineering after the first 4 years of my career. And I'm a terrible electrical engineer. I am not joking. I am like the worst electrical engineer, which is why I changed out of it. But I still identify with that, just personally.
So, well, it's foundational. I guess then it opened the path to where you are today. So it's not anything you can regret.
Yep.
So, okay. So what is your greatest accomplishment? And you can answer this any way you choose, either personal or business.
Well, I think I would say it kind of relates to the biggest challenge. So I came to Winelect in 2005. They were a training company at the time. And I was hired to start up a consulting division, which is professional services and software development, things like that, from scratch. And they had nothing. They had no marketing for it. They had no people. They had no salespeople. It was literally just, come in, and start up a division from nothing. So that was 2005. By the end of the second year, we were bigger than the rest of the company. The consulting division was. And by the third year, I think we were 2 or 3 times that, and we've grown since then. And from there, there's kind of 2 parts of this, Mitch. From there, I eventually in 2014 became CEO and an owner, and then increased that share. So building an entire business from nothing was one of the biggest accomplishments ever. I'm very proud of it. But now I'll talk about a negative / positive.
Okay.
So part of the reason why I became CEO from 2005 and then in 2014 became CEO was there was a management shakeup at the company. So, this is a small, medium-sized company, and it was a partnership. And we all know these kind of things happen. And there was, quite a difficult management shakeup at the top, which led to me being offered the CEO position and becoming an owner. Without going into all the details, because we need another hour, the company had to be rebuilt, restructured, rebranded. We weren't a cloud company. There was some financial, really tough problems that had to be, resolved. It took about 1.5 years. And I've never worked harder in my life, 80-hour weeks for 1.5 years with the other, main partner that I work with. And we recovered the company. We rebuilt it. We restructured it. We won all kinds of awards like the, Microsoft Channel Partner Worldwide Partner of the Year Award, that kind of thing. So we made it better than it was, but it was one of those restructuring, rebuild challenges. So So I'd already kind of built up something from nothing. I was very proud of that. And then came an even bigger challenge to kind of keep that and rebuild it into something even better. And there's various things, that I'm proud of in my life, but that was by far the greatest challenge I've ever faced, and did not know, at the time. In hindsight, it looks all obvious, right? But at the time, it was pretty rough. It was month to month what was going to happen, and overcoming that, and then being recognized for it, within, my partners like Microsoft and the world, and was pretty good. So I don't think I'll have a bigger challenge than that in my life, at least not in my business life anyway.
Well, after you accomplish the first with building up the company up to the point of CEO before the management shakeout, when you had the bigger issue and had to restructure and redo and start from scratch again, lessons learned, chapter 1, did they apply?
Lessons learned from the first part?
Correct.
So, yes, and I'll tell you an interesting story. So when I started in, let's say, the business management side of technology, because when I switched from electrical engineering, I was a developer, then a project manager, working your way up, from a young man. And then I was sent to Atlanta, where I am now, to start up an office, Southeast office, for a previous company. And it did pretty well. It was the fastest growing branch they'd ever had at the time. And I was modeling myself on other people, which you always do, your mentors and things like that.
Sure.
And I would handle any exit interview. So, and I'm going to get to answer your question in a minute.
Sure.
So I made sure that at every exit interview I was a part of, to understand what people saw as good, what people saw as bad, if there were problems. And I remember, I can't remember the guy's last name, but I remember his first name was Tony. Somebody left for a different job, which was pretty rare. And Tony and I sat down and we went over everything. And at the end, he added something. He said something, along the lines of, this is a great company to work for. I really enjoyed it here. I'm not leaving because anything's bad. I really respect, Todd, what you've done here. You're a good leader. And then he said, but it's not fun working for you. And I said, wow, what do you mean? He said, well, you never yell at anybody. You're very fair, but you never give the positive parts. You're kind of tough, but fair, but you're not enjoyable to work for. And the pit of my stomach just dropped, because I always wanted to be not just successful, but a great boss and have a great place to work. And it was a great place to work, except the people directly reporting to me, I was all tough, not yelling, not mean, and no joy. So the minute he said it, I knew exactly what he was talking about, because I had modeled my behavior on somebody else that I was greatly respected. But it wasn't me, it was him. And so the minute he said it, I knew exactly what he was talking about. From that day forward, it became about people. And there's all those cliches, Mitch, right? Culture is everything, or culture will eat, competence or skill for breakfast, all those kind of sayings. It's 100% true. So to answer your question, yeah, the lessons learned were, you have an incredibly tough restructuring, rebuilding challenge in front of you with a lot of obstacles. And how are you going to do it without the people? How are you going to keep them through this tough time when you're asking them for sacrifices, all that kind of stuff? So absolutely, the number one lesson learned that I bring all the time, but in that challenge as well, was got to bring along the people. You want them to be able to get up in the morning and be happy they work for you and your company. So it is that culture. It is that people part. And I know it's a cliche, but it's 100% true.
I 1000% agree with you. I learned that through my own school of hard knocks, and people said made similar statements in their exit interviews when they told the office manager how they perceive me. And it was a kick in the stomach. And here I thought I was this nice guy, but I didn't connect with them. I didn't connect with them on an emotional level and find out how they were. And I'm not there to coddle people, but it's also, we're humans and they need to feel that. And that's what engenders loyalty. It's kind of what I found. Is that true for you?
There's people, there's bosses, there's people around me right now that they feel to be successful, you have to be a very tough boss. And what I would say is, you can be tough, but still have that people part. Let them know you care about them. a little bit care about their motivations and their dreams. It doesn't mean you're one or the other, but I know people that think it's just the one, and they believe it. I mean, they will tell you this is how you got to be. It just doesn't work for me, and I haven't seen that be successful.
Well, this almost sets up my next question: is what do you wish you had known when you started out? I think you've answered it in part, but if you want to add a layer on top of this, let's say a short lesson or clear takeaway.
It really is, like you said, I just kind of answered it. It's how important the people part is. I'll tell you, here's an interesting little anecdote. When I agreed to come to Winelect, I interviewed with the 3 founders, technically, and they're quite famous people in my little world. They've written, just between 3 of them, 17 books, some of the most successful programming books out there.
Wow.
They have all kinds of awards and everything. So they're famous. I knew all their names because their books were on my shelf. I mean, it was like I tricked them into getting me to come here. But I wanted to know what they wanted from me because, they weren't business people. They were technical leaders, not necessarily business leaders. And so I went to, one was in New Hampshire, one was in Knoxville, and the last one was in Seattle. And I talked with him. He actually had an office on Microsoft's campus in Redmond. And we went to dinner, and I said, okay, what do you actually want me to do? What do you want from me? How are you going to measure me? And he said, Todd, of course we want you to grow and all that kind of stuff, and X% year over year. We can all decide that. But he said the number one thing is this company is associated with my name. Its reputation and brand maps directly onto me. He said, so the number one thing I want you to do is protect that brand and be that brand of the best is the best and the best place to work in the industry. And that's the literal second that I decided I wanted the job, because of course you have to be successful and make revenue and make profit, all that kind of thing. But what he said was quality and people. So, I had learned that lesson already from the previous discussion I just had, because that was at my previous company. So it was culture was everything. When you tell people, I want you to come here, it's a very competitive market, and you're going to be the best of the best. That's the people that will be around you. And the number one thing that I tell them when I have the initial interview before they take the job is, you can screw up 10 different ways. But if the customer loves you, you're going to have an awesome career here, So, and that is a culture thing and a people thing too. People want to know that you want them to do a great job and that you care about doing a great job for customers, and that attracts more people. So I'm just circling back to culture and people all over again.
But it's a key point. And I want to recognize something you said, because this was before we went live in this call. We chatted a little bit. And what you said was very powerful. I don't even know if you realized it. When you interviewed with this man in Redmond, whomever he is, he said, I want you to protect my personal brand because that's why the business is successful. We were talking about personal brand. There you go. There you go. It is incredibly important. I mentioned Richard Branson. I mean, Bill Gates is always going to be aligned with Microsoft, and I don't think he's involved anymore, is he? Much.
Not anymore. Not as a couple months ago.
Yeah, so he's stepped away, but that's still the first line of association is always going to be Bill Gates.
Customers. I'm not trying to make it about me, but what they will tell you is they trust me. They know I'm gonna do it right, and if I don't mess up, they know I'm gonna come back and correct it and fix whatever goes wrong. So that personal brand does lead to success. And it's funny, the people you're mentioning. So I love Richard Branson, love Elon Musk, I love Bill Gates. I have stock in all their companies, and all their companies are wildly successful. So yeah, you're picking people that are, personal, heroes is too strong a word, but people that I respect a lot.
Well, I shared the stage with Sir Richard Branson once in London about 7, 8 years ago. Yeah, at the O2 Arena. He was obviously the big keynote guy, as well as Lord Sugar, who's somebody that has the status, but nothing like Sir Richard Branson. And it was certainly a bragging point. When I talk about my speaking career, I shared the stage with Sir Richard, and it's true. I'm piggybacking on his personal brand, and I can prove it. So this is obviously he's an executive I admire because he's wild and the brand elevated because of his uniqueness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think Bill is known for getting inside hot air balloons, but Sir Richard has done it many times, racing cars and doing all that.
Oh, yeah. That's two completely different people,
Yeah,
but successful in their way.
Yeah. Okay. So what is Todd curious about right now?
So I'm curious about everything. I am always learning, and I don't mean like in the general sense. I mean, I'm always studying something. If I don't have something I'm trying to learn, and it could be technical, or I'm actually taking like a bunch of MIT classes, right now online, because I always wanted to go to MIT and didn't get in when I was, 17. So lots of science stuff, but it could be adventure stuff as well. I'm a pilot, a private pilot, and I just got my glider rating last year. So
that's cool. I've done that. That's a lot of fun.
So let's talk about that, because I was kind of recruited. That it's a club called the Mid-Georgia Soaring Association. It's about an hour from me, and I never really wanted to do it. I figured, Mitch, I already fly a plane. It's got an engine, so it's like a glider plus everything more. So how can the glider be any more interesting? So I went up. So you've been through this. It was like a discovery ride. They towed me up, and from the instant that tow rope released and it gets quiet, and the plane with no engine in it, instead of going down, it goes up. I was hooked, and I wrote a check that hour, and then spent the next year getting my commercial glider rating. So I always, what's that?
Peaceful? Isn't it peaceful?
It's amazing. I just, so you're doing it, so you notice, I literally just like 3 months ago, did my first cross country away from the airport. So I went like 50 kilometers out, whatever rating it's called. And I'll tell you, once that airport was over the horizon and I knew I couldn't glide to it, the stress level just went way up. But it's fantastic. So I always have something I'm doing. I'm building an airplane in my basement right now. It's a World War I. I got to be careful how I say this. So World War I Fokker Eindecker 3. Full size, and I've got the wings done, the rudder and empennage done, the ailerons done, just started on the fuselage, and I intend to fly it one day.
Wow, that is very cool. Very cool. But I love the glider part the most because I can relate to that. We've all flown, engine aircrafts, but the glider, it's freeing. I mean, we could talk a lot about that, just the experience and the feeling.
Oh, yeah.
I've never forgotten. It's been 30 years since I've been in one. There's a place in Palmdale, California. I don't know if it's around anymore, where they do that, where you can buy a half hour in a glider. You get towed up and do all that. And it was a great experience. And it just piqued my interest. I got to do that again. That would be a great day to go do that.
It's the most amazing thing. I mean, it's they make poetry out of it, right? You're literally riding the wind and the thermals, and you get released at 2,000 feet and you climb in a 1,000-pound aircraft, and you're climbing up to 8,000, 10,000 feet. It's just, it still blows me away that the physics of that actually.
You made me smile. Thank you for that recollection. That was fantastic. So tell us something. You're an accomplished guy, but what have you failed at?
So this is not the answer you're going to want, but I'm going to relate it back to flying again, because the instant you say that, here's the thing that pops in my mind, which is a triviality. Okay, because I've never really failed at anything big. I haven't. I've never been fired. I've never taken on some big accomplishment and utterly failed at it. Of course, little things here and there, but what pops into my mind, which again is trivial. The one exam I failed in my life that still sticks at me, and that is, I said I'm a private pilot, and I'm an instructor, actually, a certified flight instructor. But one of the things you do in the way is you get what's called an instrument rating, and that's where you get a certificate or a rating so you can fly the airplane with reference only to instruments. So they literally put a hood on you. Imagine you're flying in clouds for 3 hours. There's nothing to see. You have to be able to fly the plane by just looking at the instruments. No autopilot, for instance. And it's called instrument rating. And I took my my practical exam, my flight exam for that, and I failed it because I rushed it. I had a trip that week, and I went to go to Tennessee, and I wanted to like do my first flight with my instrument rating, and I rushed the exam, and I failed it in an embarrassing way, which it's too hard to explain. But that sticks in my mind so much because I cared about it, and I took it. It wasn't just like an exam in high school or something, that you didn't do good at, and I failed it. And that's what popped in my mind when you said it. I know that's not the big life thing you're looking for, but
no,
man,
it's pretty big because it's big to you. This is
It was
about
big to
you. So I can relate to that but it's not a failure if you went back and fixed it. If it's a lesson and you learn from it, then it's a learning experience, not a failure. And I give people the latitude to answer that any way they choose. So I would deem it not a failure, but a painful learning experience.
Yeah, I rescheduled for 3 weeks later, and got the practice in I needed and did it. But I've been lucky. I've been lucky that what I like to do or love to do, I happen to be good at. Now that doesn't come across right, so let me explain what I mean. I have some friends, brilliant friends, and one of my friends is a much better engineer than me. He's had 2 companies. He's a brilliant math and science guy, right? Mm-hmm. But he doesn't like it. He always wanted to be a novelist. He always wanted to write a book. Wow. So even in high school, he would like write and ask me to look at it, and it was not good. So what he loved to do, he wasn't great at. What he was great at, he did successfully, but it didn't do much for him. So I've been lucky that what I enjoy, software and technology and business, I've actually been good enough at it to succeed. And so far, I mean, my career's not quite over yet, but I haven't been, fired or had any major failures. So it's those personal things that are important to me that stick in my mind. And that was the one that popped up.
All right. Now I'm going to ask you my favorite question because I'm a bit of a history buff. You're a technology buff. I'm a history buff. If you could have coffee with any historical figure that is now in the afterlife, who would you choose?
I would choose, there's a couple, 2 or 3 to choose from. I think I would choose, this is a horrible theme that I'm doing, which is like all technical, personal stuff. It's between Isaac Newton and Benjamin Franklin. I think I'd go with Isaac Newton.
Okay. All right. So in the technical. All right. How about in the humanitarian realm?
That's a tough one. It's not my area at all. Who would
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. I'm thinking humanitarian. The ones that come to mind are like Nelson Mandela, for instance, someone like that.
Sure. Mother Teresa, that in that area.
Yeah, I think, again, I don't have like a big roster of people in that area because I'm such a technical background person, but maybe somebody like Nelson Mandela. Isaac Newton I picked because I do think he's the greatest, probably if you had to rank them, which is tough. If you really know what he achieved, which is crazy over multiple fields, I'd want to have coffee with him. Now, the caveat of that is he was not a nice person. If you know about Isaac Newton, there's some real issues there. I don't think it'd be very good coffee, but I would go for it and see what happens.
Yeah, just wear your bulletproof vest before you needed one, and then and endure. That's good. Okay, now let's bring it present or more current. Who's been your most important professional mentor?
So I'm going to mention 2. One in a little more of an indirect way and one in a direct way. The first would be my father. He actually rose from stock boy at an auto parts store in Baltimore to CEO over a period of many years. And it's not that he ever gives me advice on professional stuff because we're in such different industries, but when you have somebody that teaches you the right values, like hard work, integrity, honesty, they carry over into your professional life. And when you have people that weren't brought up that way, you'll see the opposite sometimes. So he brought that to me kind of in the indirect way of like the values of how to go into work and go and do business. If you want to be more specific, at my previous company I worked at, was a company called RDA Corp, and the owner was a guy named Don Awalt, who's retired now, I think almost for the last 15 years. He was the owner of RDA, and I was a developer. That's when I left my terrible electrical engineering. Well, it was a great electrical engineering job. I was just terrible at it. Decided to get into software. So I started as a developer at the lowest level you can get. But Don, I remember he did the final interview when you interview with him, and he had placed his office in the main corridor, so anybody had to walk past that office, and he had taken the door off. And he said, I don't know if you noticed, my door, I had it removed because anybody should be able to like call me up, email me, or walk in the door and just talk to me anytime they want. And Don, besides having that kind of an attitude, was a Bill Gates, a mini Bill Gates. And the reason I say that very specifically is he was somebody that was really, really smart technically and superior at business. In the 80s, they called it the golden degree. If you have like an MBA, a business degree, and a technical degree, this is when Japan was all the rage and taking over the world. That's Bill Gates, incredibly technically smart and business sense, which is hard to get in one person. And that was Don. So I learned, it was like a fire hose. I learned so much from Don. I rose from developer to managing director of the Southeast office. That's that Southeast office I opened. And he was an amazing mentor across the board. So I would mention those two people, one personal and one professional.
If you could go back to your 18-year-old self right before you jump into college, what would it be?
This isn't the answer you want either. I would say buy Apple and Google and Microsoft and Amazon and Netflix and Tesla stock. That's what I would say. And I know that's not what you're after, but I guarantee you that would be my focus. I just guarantee you. There's lots of life lesson stuff that I could talk about. But if I went to that 18-year-old me who was much more immature than I am now and tried to talk about culture and people, it'd be like talking to a wall. I know who I was back then. It would feel good for me to say it, but it wouldn't get through.
Okay. Well, you had experience what you had to experience, didn't you, in order to get where you are?
Yeah, it's exactly true.
Okay. Well, what is I know you're goal oriented and you've got some goals ahead of you because you're talking about the future. What is your plan?
My plan for the future. So we just merged, Winelect just merged with the company of Atmosera. So now we're a brand under Atmosera. We really are Atmosera, even though the whole consulting group and everything is still there. So there's, again, a personal professional part. Every time you ask me a question, for some reason, I look at both sides. Sure. Professionally, I really want this merger to go well and to come together as two companies and then to grow in a big way. So that's kind of my focus professionally, to help do that. And with my Chief Strategy Officer title, that's what I intend to do. Personally, I mentioned some of the things I've done, like gliding in a pilot, that kind of thing. I really want to experience as much of the world as I can, both in the geographical sense and cultural other countries things, but also in terms of experiences. So, I am not just a pilot. I have a hang glider in the garage. I studied mountain climbing and climbed Mount Rainier. I'm a scuba diver, but I'm also a master scuba diver trainer, instructor. I just like to learn and experience and see other things. So from the personal side, that's what I want. From the professional side, I want this next latest journey with Winelect and Atmosera to just take off in a big way. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, Todd, I would accuse you of being a well-rounded, balanced man. I mean, that's cool. You're living and doing both, which is nice. How do you overcome a challenge life throws at you when it happens? Because it does rear its ugly head at times.
So, my instant response, again, some of these I think is not what your audience might want to hear, but I'm big on just powering through it. You just don't give up and you power through it. You discipline yourself and you just keep on going. When the kind of crisis hit at Winelect in the 2014, 2015 period, you just don't give up, and you get up the next day and you work, and you get up the next day and you work, and you don't let yourself get depressed and take yourself out of the game. So I literally think of it as powering through it. One of the examples I use when I first noticed this was all the way back in college. So this was when I was an undergrad in electrical engineering, and you start out and you were in auditoriums with 200, 230 people in the freshman class. Well, by the time I graduated, there were 9 to 13 people in some of those classes. That's all there was. It was a very tough program called electrophysics. And I can't emphasize this enough. I was by far not the smartest person in any room. I had to work 3 times harder than other people because I'm no dummy, but I'm not like this incredibly smart genius. But I powered through it and outlasted 75% of everybody else who dropped out person by person. And that's when I noticed you could do that. I remember the epiphany. It sounds weird, but one day I just noticed what was going on, that I was working harder, and my friends who were smarter than me but didn't want to work as hard, they just dropped out year by year. And I realized what just grinding through it and powering through it and disciplining yourself can achieve. It was a single moment. I remember it really well. So that's my answer. That's what you do.
I think that applies to a lot of areas in life, and who sticks and stays the course till you walk it through the end zone. Is the football metaphor, but you walked it to the diploma department, and got that diploma, which is you got that sheepskin, which nobody can take away from you. All right. You've had quite a bit of experience as an executive. Personally, you've accomplished a lot. You're a glider, which brought a major smile and a memory of the feeling from 30 plus years ago. I think it was more like 35 years ago. I was in a glider. And so you've had some experience, but if you were to write a book tomorrow, what would you write about? The old adage, everybody's got a book inside them.
Yeah, there's enough self-help books out there, and everything that I just talked about is already in 20 books, right? Culture, it's about people, just powering through things, grinding it out, all that's already there. So I do want to write a book. I'm a creative person in one little part of my brain when you get past the engineering part.
Sure.
I've always wanted to write a science fiction book. So I've actually started one multiple times. And the only thing that's really preventing me from doing it is I have no time to focus on it. So again, not a business answer, but that's what I've always dreamed of doing. One of the guys that works for me, I don't want to get him in trouble and mention his name, but he always had that same dream. He's an incredible architect, software architect and cloud architect. And he, about 2 years ago, finally self-published his first book. And it was fantasy, not science fiction. And now he's on his 3rd edition of it. So I'm very jealous of him. And I want to do the same thing myself one day. That's another goal.
Todd, power through it. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Okay, this is one. What's one question you wish I'd asked? And I'll ask it now, and then you can answer.
Well, I think I brought it up kind of around the side, which is the personal part of my life is just as interesting, or at least maybe more interesting to me than the professional part. And that's all the adventure stuff. The airplane that I'm building is, that's incredibly fun. There's some remote places that I want to go and explore around the world. I never like to go, or rarely want to go to just places that all the tourists go. So like I will go to, some remote place in Greenland or Iceland or some remote, island in the South Pacific. I'm a sailor. I would like to sail. I say I'm a sailor. I have lots of certifications. I've chartered boats a couple of times, but I'd really like to just buy a sailboat and live in a boat, for some number of years and just kind of have that freedom. So the question would have been, hey, outside professional stuff, and what do you like to do? And that's the kind of thing that's on my mind, in my 50s now, not in my 30s or 40s. So I'm trying to calibrate using that time left to really enjoy those kinds of things. So it'd just be about those kind of personal things versus the professional.
Okay. And how can I best support you? Would you like to do more podcasts? Would you like to be more involved in media potentially with this new venture that you're in? Grow your personal brand? I mean, I know we've got Wintellect here. I think it's going to go under a different domain pretty soon, it sounds like.
Well, for now, we're keeping both domains. That might change in the future. We'll be talking about that because the Wintellect brand is pretty well recognized. But yeah, it could disappear, and probably will one day. I just don't know when. To answer your question, I would kind of put that back on you and say, let's have that discussion, right? It's like, I don't know what the model is for what you're trying to accomplish. Can I help you accomplish it and you help me accomplish, mine at the same time? What's that look like? That would be where you and I would start.
Okay.
I don't have an answer for that until you and I kind of talk, because I don't know. I need to know what makes you, hum too.
Got it. I appreciate that. And how has your experience been today?
Oh, it's fun. I mean, who doesn't like talking about themselves? And I haven't got to go on a stage in person for a while now because of COVID. Because I will present at conferences and things like that, but I haven't been able to do that lately. So,
so you are a speaker.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of it, but some years I'll do a few, and some years I'll do one or none. I did a small one for the Microsoft Inspire conference a couple months ago, maybe. So yeah, I do speak from time to time.
Oh, well, we'll have to chat more about that, because up until the pandemic, I lived in Asia for the last 11 years. And what I did was train professional speakers how to present and sell from the stage. So we can certainly talk more about that offline. I mean, that's my passion, and I enjoy doing the interviews with select individuals, but the speaking part is where people can speak and address one-to-many versus one-to-one. And that's the benefit of that. And I enjoy it personally. So what is your final word? How do we take this away?
So if I was talking to an audience, and I would
have an audience. This will be
I would ignore the professional part, and just say, I kind of already heard me say it. Look, life is to be experienced. What are you here for if you're not going to experience life as best you want to see it? And the corollary to that would be, and I don't know that I'm very, very good at this part, but try to leave it a little better than when you started. So for me, one of the things I'm proudest of that we talked about is building up a couple companies or divisions, or whatever you want to call it. And it's not just a personal pride thing. I brought along a lot of people who have now gone out into the world and started their own companies and had their success, and I've made them a lot of money in professional careers. And we've achieved some things that, in terms of awards and things that we've actually accomplished for customers, some big things. So, try to leave it better than when you started, try to contribute, but also just make sure you experience it. And because otherwise, what's it for? What is your life about if you're not going to experience all you can experience during your lifetime?
And give back. So you've been able to mentor some others, which is great. That's legacy.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, great. You've been a fantastic guest, and you made me smile a couple times, and especially about the gliders, and truly a practical engineer who then found his skill sets and was able to put that into play. And I appreciate your time here today, and look forward to having you as a guest again. Thank you, Todd.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me.